only through the orchid door of the heart and the violet flame therein may you place your feet on the rainbow bridge that leads to the city of the golden gate and the shrine of clear light therein.
So a friend of mine, Pandora's box is open, and a friend of mine in the deep state, a colleague, a friend of mine in the deep state, we had a long talk in January of this year. And Pandora's box has been in my psyche strongly for the last year or so, but he brought it up himself, and he said, when some of the legends say in the bottom of the box, after chaos is flown, she opens it up and chaos flies out into the world. He said some of the legends say at the bottom of the box is written hope. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to tell you that. A message. 2 new publications. One I said in June 2017, that's now, and one in September 2017. We'll talk more about both of them. So, Wyrds of Power, a new language for a new reality. This is the deluxe edition of the 5 books in the Primal Reality series that have all been written, or have all been arrived since 2010. So now they're all in one book. And it's here tonight. And you can go away with copies of it. It's lots. It's everything is in here. There's a few things that are not included, but there's also new material. Some of you were here for the talk. Remember? Can we say
metachlorians? Vodka, metachlorians, and
Maitreya, midichlorians, and Mysterium.
Yeah.
Well,
that's it. Yeah.
That's it. And so it has new content, and it's all organized just chronologically. But this will be the living document, and all updated, and maybe every year or so or two, keep it alive. And we won't have to answer that question. Which book should I read? Because they're all in there. I'm not going to talk much more about that book. Tonight we're going to go into this book. This is the first time anyone has ever seen the title. I, the Dragon, Chronicles of an Epic Life Among the Humans.
Nice.
We're going to call it an autobiographical novel.
Okay.
My lawyers have, no, we're going to call it an autobiographical novel. We're going to call it a mythical poem. But it is it's autobiographical in nature. Whether it's fiction or not, it's certainly poetry, and that's our story, and we're sticking to it. I will say this: I had a profound sense of urgency to finish this book. I said I was going to do it from Beltane to Beltane, and I did. Beltane 2016 to Beltane 2017, and I did. I had a profound sense of urgency. I mean, mathematically, I've lived far more years than I'm going to. And for all we know, we're going to be climate refugees or some other kind of refugees before long. We don't know. But I had a great sense of urgency to finish it, and I did. And another thing I want to tell you about this project is I had a profound sense of being elsewhere during the writing of it. I can't describe it really. It really was like time travel. And when I start to say that, people expect that I had some kind of cathartic experiences going over the past from my birth till now, and it wasn't that at all. That's all already happened. But it was really, literally like time travel. And I get, you get time travel bends. Like when you go deeper into the water and you have to come up if you come up too fast. So I would write for 2 days, and then I had to basically lie around with my legs up the wall for 2 days, and then I would start again. And this is, and then I came back from elsewhere when it was done, and I was, wow, man, everything's gone to hell, like, you know, and there was a lot of stuff that needed tending to because I just literally felt like I had been gone for a long time, well, for a year. And the third thing I'll tell you about it, I'll read. This is the first time anyone ever has read from this book. This is from Note to the Reader. I thought it important to give some context to the reader so they could still get out while they had time. But this is just one thing from the Note to the Reader. I could have written a book about my path of healing from severe physical and sexual abuse I endured in childhood. I could have written a book about my professional life in intelligence and security and what it taught me about what goes on in the shadows of power, state and corporate. I could have written a book about my lifelong journey into mysticism, yoga, shamanism, and the occult, articulating the powerful realizations that I stumbled into along the way. I could have written a book about my life as a writer and a poet and offered a compelling narrative of the agonies and ecstasies of the artist's life and the grim struggle to keep creative process alive and free in the depraved conditions of the modern age, industrial and post-industrial. But I have chosen instead to write one autobiographical novel, woven out of all four of these narrative threads. Nothing less would deliver the truth. This is the book that demanded to be written. So that's that. Okay. So this is the book's structure. It has 7 parts. Part 1 and Part 7 are kind of frame the rest of it and are collections of epiphanies which frame the rest of it. And then the 5 sections in the middle are narrative timeline. So Strength of 10 goes from 1953 to 1966, and the title came from a poem by Tennyson, which was very important to me when I was a kid, and it was a poem, one of his Arthurian poems, and it was about Galahad, one of the Grail Knights, and it says, "My strength is as the strength of 10 because my heart is pure." And I used to tell being a strange kid, I used to tell this to myself. And I still do. I have all my life told this to myself. And so I taught it strength of 10. The second book, in the second part of the book, is from 67 to 78, and it's called God's Mad Dog, and that is the title of a chapter on a very important nightmare that I had. And Jeweled Skull, from 78 to 1993, is a dream that Joe Miller had toward the end of his life, and that he told me at the edge of his bed, just after he woke up from it. And it's a powerful visionary dream, and so that's the title of that section. And then the title of the 5th section is Death Planet. That's 1993 to 2008. And that is that title is also from the description of a very important, powerful nightmare. Nightmare is almost like too understated a word. And then the final one of the sequence in the narrative is How Durga Came to Power. That's 2008 till now. Most of the people in this room I didn't know 7 years ago, and many of you are. We're deeply involved in each other's lives now, and in fact, more people in this room haven't been known to me for more than 7 years, and are people in this room who, the rest of us have known each other for decades. But so the fact that you outnumber us is very important. So thank you for being here. Okay, so that's the structure of the book. I am going to read a little bit. I'm not going to read the whole first section. There's 5 chapters in the first part of the book. I'm only going to read a little tiny bit from the first, and then the third section, and the third chapter and the fifth chapter. And then we'll move on to some less heavy things. I'm just going to read, I'm going to skip the first part, and I'm just going to read the third and fifth. The third chapter in part one is called The Day I Die. A few years ago, I saw my own death, a premonition. Or perhaps, considering the quantum nature of this universe, it would be more accurate to say I saw my death along one of the countless timelines that stretch out from that particular moment. It was a vision, not a dream. They have different textures. Visions are silk, dreams are wool. It may seem strange to start a memoir of my life with the premonition of my death, but it is definitely the beginning of this story. On the timeline in this vision, I was or will be in Europa. It felt perhaps like I was living in Europa. I've always felt in one way more at home in Europa than in the United States in many ways. Of course, that could be meaningless now because depending upon when the quantum tumblers tick, when my actual death occurs along some timeline on which the true Europa, where I feel so much at home, may have already begun, just as in one sense the America I loved is almost all gone. Anyway, in this vision, along at least one possible timeline, my death takes place perhaps 15 years into the future. Oh, maybe 10 now. It is chill and overcast on the day I die. It is the autumn of the year. It is late afternoon or early evening, not yet twilight, but close. I am walking toward an intersection outside of a Gothic cathedral. It feels like the Cathedral of St. Michael and St. Gudula in Brussels. I am wearing a sports jacket and blue jeans. I feel embodied and in excellent yogic shape. I can feel the burn of pranat chi. My 5 bodies are aligned and at peace. My heart explodes. And I'm lying on the street looking up into the sky, out beyond the sky on my way. I feel the throbbing lives of the peregrine falcons that dwell in the towers, hibernating there in winter, nesting there in spring. I feel their feathers dropping, slow motion, covering the gargoyles. It is all ecstasy and sorrow at once. It is all felt in slow motion as my wisdom and bliss bodies seem to expand, but in reality simply shine forth as the other 3 sheaths begin to fall away. I do not know if will be how I die, and now that I have used it as the beginning of this autobiographical novel, I have probably altered all of the countless timelines in some incomprehensible way, but I do know that I have a profound sense of urgency about finishing this story of my life. For months now, since Beltane, I've been trying to find the current of this tale. For a while I assumed it was a river, and I kept looking for that river here in the deep primal forest of Psyche. I heard the river, I felt it, but I could not find its bank. I wanted to because I assumed that you and I would ride its current to the sea. The river's current would be the narrative and it would take us away, but I simply could not find it. And indeed, I got lost looking for it. But then I remembered the future in which I die near the steps of the Cathedral of St. Michael and St. Gudula in Brussels. And I realized this story would be more like a Gothic cathedral, one that served as a conduit between the Pleiades and the molten core of Terra. Yes, more of a great cathedral than a great river leading to the sea. And within this cathedral, there would be many chambers for you to explore, many tunnels, many hallways, many secret doors, many altars, many balconies and basements, and towers and crypts, and a great hall. But how would I ever succeed in designing this cathedral? And if I did come up with the design, how would I build it? What materials, with what engineering feats? And then I came to another revelation. The cathedral that I would bring forth for you already existed. Because now I am standing before a great mound of earth, vines, rubble, and roots, and I know that the cathedral is contained within this mound. I just have to excavate it for you, and light candles, and shape censers out of petrified gourds, and do some expressionist cave paintings on the walls. and clear out the pathways within the many labyrinths, and yes, engrave sacred syllables around all the door frames for the many entrances. And so it begins. This section is called Law and Order, SVU. And this is like the sound of a TV announcer's voice, because he says this at the beginning of every episode. In the criminal justice system, sexually based offenses are considered especially heinous. In New York City, the dedicated detectives who investigate these vicious felonies are members of an elite squad known as the Special Victims Unit. These are their stories. And they go doom, doom, doom. This afternoon, I found myself lying on the floor engrossed in a cable TV marathon. Episode after episode of a gritty crime drama called Law and Order SVU, Special Victims Unit. Well written and superbly acted, the show follows the 4 tough NYPD detectives in their relentless pursuit of rapists, pedophiles, and murderers. Watching these occasional marathons is an indulgence I allow myself every now and then. I cry with joy when the team succeeds in liberating some wretched child from the pit of hell. And as I watch them sweep that little girl or boy up into their arms, I wonder, what would have happened to me had I been liberated from the pit of hell? It wouldn't have taken much to find me. It wouldn't have even required a special unit. Had somebody simply made a call, anyone, a relative, a teacher, a doctor, a neighbor, but no one did. It wouldn't have taken much. The detectives would have smelled the stench if they had come to the front door. Their request to gain entrance would have been rebuffed by an articulate, strong-willed woman whose strange excuses didn't really make any sense. Once they had obtained a warrant and forced the door open, it would have been all over. Because please understand, they would not have even been able to open the door all the way. They would have had to squeeze through one by one, because a glacier of black plastic garbage bags pressing up against the bolted door. Traversing slag heaps of refuse, the detectives would have come upon a feral nest of 1950s consumerism. Centered around a black and white TV and a mattress with empty Coke bottles, yellowed newspapers, tangled hangers, magazines smeared with rancid food like layers of sediment. There, they would have found a child that the world had forsaken. Yes, I imagine myself swept up in the arms of one of those 4 detectives. What would have happened to me? I suppose I would have ended up with my grandmother or one of my aunts, the same aunts who had not gone to the authorities. And even if I hadn't ended up with one of them, even if I had been remanded to the crapshoot of the foster home system, I would have had a better chance than I did. But there was no special victims unit in the 1950s, and no one came to my rescue. Of course, had I been saved, my life would have taken a very different direction. Or would it have? What would the trajectory of my life look like in an alternate universe? After all, I was a stranger in a strange land even before the hell of my lost childhood swallowed me up. From before the beginning, I was destined to lead a different sort of life. So be it. I found my own way. So, people say, there's some people that said to me, friends, that, I can't wait to read it. Because, I wonder how you'll feel afterwards. So, that's the first reading of anything from this 300-page book. So, we're going to go on to the second movement of this talk. A little more air to breathe. 7 beasts. And it occurred to me, check the time, it occurred to me that looking back after I had finished the manuscript, I realized that it'd be interesting in a talk to tell the story, to tell the narrative of the story using the animal energies and allies and protectors that came to me throughout my life. and where and how and what. So I thought it would be an interesting way to tell it. So that's how I came up with the idea of the 7 beasts for this talk. And there's some beautiful quotes from Ted Andrews. I love this book, Animal Speak, The Spiritual and Magical Powers of Creatures Great and Small. But I'm sure some of you know it. But he says here, the true shaman, the true naturalist, works to reconnect conscious human life with nature and spirit through totems and ritual. So so the first animal spirit that came to me was the lizard, so I want to make sure I do it right. So bear with me for a minute. I'm just going to cheat and check my notes just to get the sequence right. Yeah. So this image. Sebastião Salgado, amazing photographer, is an amazing photograph of a marine iguana's claw on the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador in sometime in the last couple of decades. It's an amazing picture, amazing photographer. Check out his work. If you had asked me when I was a little boy what I wanted to be if I could go anywhere in the world, where would I go? I would have told you I wanted to go to the Galapagos Islands during the mating season of the marine iguanas. Mm-hmm. That would have been my answer without hesitation. And if you had asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said I want to be either a herpetologist or a paleontologist. And then if you asked me what that meant, I would have said, well, a herpetologist is a lizard doctor. And paleontologist is a dinosaur doctor, but they're already dead. But that's what I wanted to be, and that's where I wanted to go. And so I found this picture, and I thought, well, this is perfect. And I am a lizard king. I can do anything. Of course, that's from our dear Jim Morrison. Yeah. And the Celebration of the Lizard, which was an important, needless to say, an important song for me. But anyway, so I wasn't allowed outside. I wasn't allowed to have friends. I wasn't allowed to play in the street, and I wasn't allowed to go to school for most of my childhood. But I had terrariums full of reptiles and amphibians, and they were my life. And they were my connection to the energy of life, and they were my connection to the reality of nature. And in my communion with them, they gave me the initiation of the reptilian brain. And the whole thing about the triune brain, MacLean introduced it, I think in the 50s, the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the primate brain. I know, and then Carl Sagan popularized it, dear Carl Sagan, and then since then it's becoming way too simplistic in some of the ways that it's used and adapted. And in fact, the science of the brain has gone far beyond. And it's showing that it's much more complicated than all that. But I am fairly confident when it's all sorted out in the end, there will be still basically these thrusts, these movements of the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the primate brain. It'll still shake out this way, although it'll be much subtler and much more complex than some of the ways that it's described. But anyway, the reptilian brain is about survival. It's all about survival. Whatever you have to do to survive. They bite off, they grab you by the tail, let go of the tail, grow another one. Survive, whatever it takes. So the lizard came to me, and it never left me. I mean, when it went to Machu Picchu when I was 18, and I had a mystical experience, which is in the autobiographical novel, and a lizard ran across my hand, and that brought me back to normal time and normal space. And in the forests of Sonoma, in recent time, in the last 10 or 20 years, I could more often than not walk up to a lizard and stroke its spine. So this energy is still with me, but and they were swept up. Again, it's in the It's in the story. They were swept up in the Holocaust. Their lives were swept up in the Holocaust that my childhood was swept up in. They met a horrible end, but they gave me something that I still carry with me. So we honor the lizard. And then next came the wolf. There's a quote from Steppenwolf, from Hermann Hesse's Steppenwolf. And again, I'm going to just consult my notes because I want to make sure that I get a certain sequence for you. Yeah. So, Steppenwolf, some of you probably read it a long time ago. It's a book within a book within a book. Hermann Hesse writes Steppenwolf, and in his book is Harry Haller's book, For the Record, for Madmen Only, Harry Haller's Record. And within Harry Haller's Record is Treatise on the Steppenwolf. Somebody gives him this book called Treatise on the Steppenwolf. So it's a book within a book within a book. And it starts off really being about alienation and the alienation of certain kind of personality, but then it ends in the promise of ecstatic revelation and integration. And he gets to go to the magic theater for Madmen Only, and it's a horseshoe-shaped space and with mirror walls on one side and 5 doors on the other side. He goes into 5, and each one is some part of his life. I found it interesting because it ended up 5 parts to this book. But so Steppenwolf's there, but there's an arc. Is the mammalian heart. The wolf is like so is the reptilian brain, and then the mammalian brain, the heart, the wolf, because the wolf really isn't a solitary creature. Steppenwolf was alone, but really the wolf is a pack creature. And so there's a whole arc in my evolution of my psyche from Steppenwolf and what it meant to me to what Pinkola Estes, women who run with the wolves meant to me. And you can see it culturally. There's an arc for us all. And so I wanted the other pictures. This is 101 dire wolf skulls at the La Brea tar pits, which was a place of power to me. It's one of the places the wolf came for me, was in the La Brea tar pits. That and an album of wolf cries, which we sang to one night, one of these other talks. The other picture is the face of a gray wolf in Yellowstone Park. It's from the BBC, that picture. You know the story of what happened when they reintroduced the wolves into Yellowstone Park? I'll just talk through it briefly. So the wolf had been gone since the 30s in Yellowstone, and they decided to reintroduce it several decades later. And within I don't know the time frame, but shortly thereafter, there was one beaver colony in Yellowstone before they reintroduced the wolves. After they reintroduced the wolves, there were 3 thriving beaver colonies. Why? Well, the beavers used the willow tree to make their dams. And the willow trees had been eaten away down to very great weakness by the elk populations, there were too many elk. Not only were there too many elk, they were too sedentary because they didn't have to run from anything. They had no predators. So they were just sitting by the river eating the willows that the beavers used to build their dams, so the beavers suffered. The wolves came, the elk had to start moving, the willows came back, and the beavers flourished. But not only the beavers flourished, of course the willows flourished, then the beavers flourished, but also all the carrion eaters, the bears, the ravens, the coyotes, everybody was, this is great, because there's all this elk meat lying around, so all of these other species flourished from the reintroduction of the natural predator to this great forest. But even the elk flourished. There were 3 times, well, I don't want to get the number wrong, there were many more elk after the wolves reasserted their presence. There were many more elk than there were before the wolves were reintroduced. They were healthy. Well, it was also warmer because climate change had kicked in by then, but they were moving. They had a more dynamic life, and they had more need to make more out because they were losing more. So everything in the ecosystem went up because of the reintroduction of the wolf. So we honor the wolf. The wolf is still with us. So if you were to follow the logic of the triune brain, I would have been showing you right now a picture of a gorilla or an orangutan or a chimpanzee or something, because reptile brain, mammalian brain, and then primate brain. But it didn't. For me, it didn't go that way, because the bear came to me in my sometime in my 40s, and it came in the death planet years when really it's the dark night of the soul. And I always hesitate to say the dark night of the soul. I counsel people to say, talk about them in plurals, because there may be more than one. You might be surprised. What you called your dark night of the soul may turn out to be, it's just a bad weekend. Because later on you might find out what. But I'm confident that this one I could call in all caps the dark night of the soul, this period of time of great tragedy, personal tragedy, loss, grief, and failure, and other things, corresponding, of course, with worldly fame. Go figure. But anyway, the bear came to me. Where did the bear come from? Well, so I told you Arthurian legend had been a part of my life since I was a child. And I had gone back deeper and deeper into Arthurian legend, was much more comfortable with the original the oldest Welsh versions, and the older Celtic versions than with the later English and French versions. And so, but our Arthur is from, is it Arto? It's Arto, the bear. Arthur is the bear, Arto. And Artio is the bear goddess, the Celtic bear goddess, Artemis and Artio. The bear is sacred to Artemis too. So the bear came from me, and this is a beautiful bear skeleton in a cave 24,000, 26,000 years ago. And this line, I am bear, first of the gods and fiercest, is from a very important epiphany, which is in this book, called Cave Bear Speaks. And I've read it a few times in talks. I'm not going to read it tonight, but it was an important acknowledgement. But why did I need the bear? I needed something fierce and powerful and more dangerous than everything I was facing. I needed a powerful, a force so powerful that it could face what I was facing in my life. And so the bear came to me. So we honor the bear. Well, by the way, berserker also comes from, not from the Celtic, but berserker comes from bear too. But a little farther north. Berserker. And I don't know, has anybody read Planet of the Cave Bear? That was an important book to me, Jean Auel's Planet of the Cave Bear. So she, a very important character is called Greb. And Greb is the shaman, the medicine man of the clan. And he was born deformed because he had an abnormally large head. And then then he was mauled by a bear as a child, and he lost, I think, an arm and an eye, if I'm correct. I was very moved by that story and moved by him, and he was the protector of the little girl from another species, human species, Homo species, that came and lived with them. He protected Alia, so I forget her name, Kreb, the Mogor. And so there's a lot about the bear. We pay homage to the bear. So then the raven came, and the raven, and I say raven / black crow. So we could say just crow, really. Although the raven is the Morrigan's messenger and Odin's spy is how I like to think of them, because they were both. Raven is sacred to both of them. It's also the crow, and I've been everywhere I go. There are crows and ravens. I've taken a lot of pictures of them. I mean, they're out on the street. They were always waiting for me in the parking lot where I went to work at NASA Research Park. They're all over the forest where we lived. They're ravens stand up on the steeples of this building sometimes, and crows everywhere down at Ocean Beach, and they're always a presence. And so it was the first winged creature that came to me. So now we're in my 50s, and I know that there are other people in the room very close to me who have their own relationships with the raven and the crow. Things mean things, different things. Animal energies mean different things to different people, and this is just my experience. But this was the first winged bird that came to me, and to me it was taking me into the darkness with a big D. You know, the shadow is a very misunderstood thing. If you listen to some people long enough, even great psychologists, you get the impression that the shadow is like some little quadrant in your mind where you've stuffed everything that you don't want to look at. Well, that's one thing it is, but it's not some little quadrant of your mind and the rest is light. It is half. If you wanted to make your psyche, you would make it half dark and half light. And inside the dark half would be a dash of the light, and inside the light half would be a dash of the dark, and you'd have the wave of yin and yang. That's more like what our psyche really is. So the shadow, I say shadow, but I don't mean it in simply the terms of some limited thing. I mean it in terms of the darkness, the great darkness, which makes all light possible, which precedes dark, which is the everything. So there's a beautiful Picasso painting of woman with raven, and this is a raven from Bryce Canyon National Park, courtesy of the U.S. Department of Interior National Parks. Long May Day Park. So we honor the raven. And then they started to get surprising. So then this is all recent during this last few years, the vulture came. I talked about my sense of my own mortality, but pictures, this is Tibetan sky burials. Have you ever seen pictures of Tibetan burials? So they have themselves chopped up and fed to the vultures. You take the person up. AJ's been there. You take the person up and you feed them to the vultures, and the vultures know, well, this is where lunch. And so they all come and they mass and they wait for the bodies, and the families and the monks feed it. And the vultures spiral up far into the sky. It's as if they were taking the spirit. It's a very powerful thing. And the other image, that's from Reuters, and the other image is Salvador Dali's chair with the wings of a vulture, which forced itself into this presentation. Salvador Dali's chair with the wings of a vulture. I'm going to read you something about vulture from the book. We're getting there. Yeah, we're getting there. The vultures know that the end is just the last of 7 veils, and that when it falls, the naked beauty of endlessness is revealed, wanton and voluptuous. The vultures feast on the flesh of that fallen veil, with one eye on the exquisite mystery of the dance, and the other on the unspeakable truth into which it flows. I wish I could save you from your troubles, but I couldn't even save myself from my own. Nevertheless, here we are. The vultures know why. There is a savage sublimity within you. Sooner or later, it will erupt. And when it does, the lava pouring from its dark core will engulf all of your lesser dreams in one vast life-changing vision, again and again. The vultures know how. The heartbeat of each creature is the divine spanda itself poured into a single chalice. From that first pulsation to the last, each creature's life is one long drink from that chalice, and when the chalice is emptied, we slam it down on the altar, demanding another. Follow the vultures as they spiral up into the sky of nothingness. They know. Spanda equals space. Space equals spanda. Your own heartbeat is the grail for which you have searched everywhere and in vain. It holds a secret tincture concocted just for you. Drink it and you will know what the vultures know. All that matters is that long drink. Mortality and immortality are not separate, they sustain each other. Follow the vultures, spiraling upward and then swooping down on powerful wings of bliss, to tear at the flesh of that fallen veil with beaks and talons of fierce clarity. Follow the vulture. They know.
Yes.
So we pay honor the vulture. And then the sixth beast is the dragon. So if you go through curating, I enjoy curating art, and so for my friends, and so, you know, if you go through his 2,000 years of male knights slaying dragons, and it gets very tiresome. And, you know, poor King George, who knows what he was up to. But anyway, it's like dragon after dragon being slayed by some guy. And so there's an evil, the legend of the evil dragon, and it's the epitome of it is so magnificently done in the Hobbit books, Tolkien's Hobbit books, and in Peter Jackson's movies of the Hobbit books. I mean, it's just perfect. That is the quintessential. The dragon who has suffered, he even talks about gold poisoning. And there aren't too much gold, and so the dragon has gold poisoning, and it just has to hold on to its gold. Well, I was thinking, this is a beautiful Theodore Severn Kittleson. This is a dragon, the bones of a dragon with its hoard in a cave. The other dragon photo that I use for the cover is also from him. He's Norwegian, so it's the Norwegians gave me, my Norwegian blood gave me something. And I love this one because I was thinking, so of course alchemy, and of course dragons there's a whole, you could write books about the alchemical meanings east and west of dragons, but I'm just thinking about it in terms of hoarding gold. Well, so alchemically speaking, the gold of human experience, the gold of human existence, and the evil dragon hoards gold and becomes poisoned and dangerous and weird, but the other dragon, you know, hoards gold, the gold of human experience and the gold of human evolution, gathers it and protects it in his cave. And there's a very powerful message in that. And then even his bones become medicine and will be found by whoever finds the treasure trove that he gathered of human experience. They'll find his bones, and what's left of his skin will be medicine. That's the other half of the dragon story. And there's a beautiful quote from Ursula Le Guin: people who deny the existence of dragons are often eaten by dragons from within. So I'll read you one. This is the last thing I'm going to read in the book.
Is that from the Wizard of Earthsea?
Yes. You know, it's from one of the trilogy. I'm not sure which book, but yes. Dragon. All of this will come and go before the end, and you will be standing right where you took your first step, not in space or time, but in that love being which pervades and envelops both. You will have so much to say, so much to share, but no words and so little time. The dragon within you knows the truth of this world. With lidless eyes it has gazed into the sun and seen through it to the other side, beholding its own image, resurrected, wings unfurled, throat on fire, shimmering scales reflecting Maya's torrid dance, and the seventh veil, and as the seventh veil falls to reveal her naked power. All of this will come and go before the end, and you will be standing right where you took your first step, not in space or time, but in that love being which pervades and envelops both. The dragon within you knows the truth of this world. Hatched in the nest of sorrows, it fed on the flesh of its unknowing until it knew. Ageless, it sets fire to the corpse of an age. Ageless, it births the next, where you took your first step, not in space or time, but in that love being which pervades and envelops both. You will have so much to say, so much to share, but no words and so little time. Whoever you are, wherever you stand or fall or kneel or crawl, whatever beauty you hold in your hands, it is priceless and fleeting. You must pass it on before it is lost forever. It will only be a whisper of what you saw, only the shadow of what you felt, but it may be enough to ignite the next smokeless fire in the throat of the next dragon, birthing the next age from the words from the womb of its mistress Maya, dripping in blood and placenta. This is the truth of the world. So
Is that the seventh beast?
I'm sorry?
Is that the seventh beast?
No.
I think so.
That's six. Seventh is like a curveball.
The magical unicorn.
So the seventh beast is, we don't know. There's no name for the seventh beast. Not really a beast. It's like a demigod or demigod beast. And I realized that it served the same oracular and medicinal function in my journey, but it had become different things, but it was still there and pre-existing the others, really. So Narasimha, the lion god, lion emanation of Vishnu, fourth emanation of Vishnu, I think. And I saw this picture in a friend's house, and I said, God, I love that image, and that person gave me, and I kept it with me for ages. I had no idea what the story of Narasimha was, and then in the Death Planet years, when I realized I had to take a trip back in time and understand a few things in a new way, I said, what that? I looked up Narasimha, and so, see, he's ripping apart the entrails of this guy, and there's this little boy over here. So, he was the man that Narasimha is ripping apart, disemboweling, is a demon king. And the boy is his son. And the demon king, the Vishnu had killed the demon king's brother. And the demon king, being a very persuasive demon, pleaded, he was so grief about the loss of his brother, and he pleaded with Vishnu, and Vishnu took pity on him and gave him a boon. And he said, well, whatever you want, name it. And so the demon king said, I want to be invincible to, I can't be killed inside the house, I can't be killed outside the house, I can't be killed in the day, I can't be killed in the night, and I can't be killed with my feet on the ground, if I'm on the earth. Right? There might have been a few others, but I remember those. And so Vishnu said, very well. And but the demon king's son was a devout little boy, and he said, well, Vishnu is everywhere, to his father. And the demon king said, oh, really? Is he in here? And he takes his sword and he slashes into the pillar behind him in their palace. And And the boy says yes, and the sword hits the pillar, and the pillar cracks open, and the lion, the fourth emanation of Shiva, of Vishnu, emerges from the pillar, the form of the lion god, and he picks up the king, so his feet are not on the earth. And he takes him to the doorway, so he's neither inside nor outside the palace. And it so happens to be twilight, so it's neither day nor night. And he destroys him. Narasimha. Then in the middle is Archangel Michael, who's been with me since I was a little boy. And he, the Archangel energy, whatever the Archangel energy is, to call it a he is ridiculous, but in the last 2,000 years, we've got 4 of them, and one of them is named Michael. And I love this particular painting of Michael because he's usually depicted with his sword and crushing some dwarf. But in this one, he's just standing there helping people up out of the pit of hell. And the angels, the rest of them are behind him. So I like that one. And then the third one is Jabamanta, a friend of mine. She's not here. She's back east. Visiting her parents, she just got engaged. And she always used to call me Jabamanta. But I better find out what this is. So this is the king of the bears. He was before time. He was there when they churning the milk to bring out the nectar of the world. Jabamanta, king of the Himalayas, king of the bears. And he taught Hanuman, he put Hanuman in touch with his powers. He showed Hanuman that he could, you can leap across oceans. And then Hanuman could leap across, you can, do this, do that. Hanuman had no idea until Jabamanta clued him in. There's a lot of marvelous stories about him. But I realized he was part of my story, part of the medicine which protects me and the medicine through which I care about others. So that is the seventh beast, kind of this mysterious, pre-existing medicine. Now, I'm going to not go through this last part because I don't want us to go too long. And we'll do that another time, but really we went through the 7 beasts. That's and so this book, Wyrds of Power, is available now, and these copies are the lodge's copies, and so if you want a copy, just put a donation in the lodge's basket, and I will be happy to sign it for you, and it can be yours. The other book will come out in September. I'm doing some due diligence about the delivery system of that book, but it's quite possible that what I will do is have a limited edition, signed and numbered, that'll only be available through me. I might do that in September, or I might do something else, but I'll let you know. But I'm taking time to just look at what the best way to deliver it is, because it has to be different than the others, because of its nature. So thank you for 9:09. Pretty good. We started late, so that's pretty good. So if you will join me.
No, wait. We're going to give Richard, or you're not done yet.
I'm not done yet.
Oh, that was.
So thank you. If we just take a moment and get comfortable just for a few breaths. Just for a few breaths. And if you would cup your hands together like this in the kind of a lotus mantra, and bring them to your heart. And if you know the 12-syllable mantra of Padmasambhava and Yeshizogyo, you can say it with me. If you don't, it really doesn't matter. We're all here. And I'm going to say it Tibetan style a few times. And we'll all be traveling together on the power of the 12 syllable mantra. It's very important to me. Om Ahum Benzar Peme Siddhi Om 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 Om Ahum Benzar Peme Siddhi Om. The northwest border of the land of Oriana, the distant lotus blossom, the marvelous one has achieved the supreme accomplishment. Renowned as the lotus born and traveling in the company of many dakinis, I will follow you on this path of supreme accomplishment. Please come and bless me, Guru Pema Siddhi Om. Now put your hands together and Namaste Mudra and bring them up above your crown. We're going to go Ah, Om, Ah, Hum, and we're going to take a deep breath and give a loud, vulgar Ha to the universe. Take a deep breath.
Well, it's our turn to give Richard a round of applause.
Thank you.